Right, welcome to this session on creating and planning weekend duty to God types of retreats. We're actually going to have multiple presenters tonight that are going to talk about different styles of weekend events. The first one is going to be Bill and Jock. They're going to be talking about 10 Commandment hike, 12-point hike, faith hike, whatever you want to title that event. They're going to be talking about those types of hikes. So Bill, if you want to hit your share screen button.
Okay.
And we'll go into that.
Share. Not that. Where is the right one? I just had it queued up.
Down at the bottom.
There we go. Well, let me get past the obvious things here. For those of you who don't know me, and it's most of you, but I know a good number of you, this is who I am, Bill Chafin. I'm the scouting coordinator for the Methodist Church for the Virginia Annual Conference. That's my number one role. I'm like many of you that we wear many hats on our heads, but that's one. I want to talk for a while, as Amanda was calling it, a 10 Commandment hike, a faith hike, a commitment hike. The word is hike, and there will be a hike involved when you do this event. What's the purpose of a faith hike? I've put in here that it's presenting an opportunity to reveal the basic tenet of our faith, to solidify the faith, or introduce faith to a number of scouts. Those scouters really don't know about the 10 Commandments. It's a great thing. I encountered this in a training at Philmont a number of years ago. It's one of the few truly ecumenical scouting events that we utilize that's across any number of faith traditions. I suppose most everyone knows of the 10 Commandments as found in the book of Exodus and Deuteronomy. They're essential parts of the Torah and fundamental in Christianity and Judaism. The 5 pillars of Islam are central to Muslims, and they're similar in many respects. So the point of this is any scout can go through this event. The destinations, as you can see here, and it should have a pretty wide spectrum of religious traditions that are in your scout council or in your geographic area, a temple, a church, whatever you may have. And we would recommend that you do each one of those. You choose as many of the different houses of faith as you can find. I just, on this particular slide, did something I don't like to do in PowerPoints. I put a whole lot of stuff on it, and I apologize for that. But, a PowerPoint slide to me should be a couple of bullet points to let it go. However, if you look at these, scroll through these, the event planning logistics, whether you're going to plan a troop meeting, a venture crew outing, or a camporee, a lot of these are going to be pretty much the same. However, some of the different pieces that would go through in here is you're speaking to the different faith communities that are associated with your scout council and see if they're willing to participate and be a host for a short period of time for groups coming into their church and learning about particular commandments that's assigned to them. To look at the one that I have done, I would have preferred suburban, but I've done urban because of the walking and the amount of distance between, depending on where you live and how much room you've got and how much time you want to put into it. The ones that I've done have been kind of half a day, 3/4 of a day on Saturday. My friend, who's going to follow me up in a few minutes, has spoke about having a weekend. So it's fantastic. You can do it in any number of ways. But one thing I don't think you should really do, because you get out of the sequence of it, is do it over several weekends. Do it right there at one time and let it be done. Down here at the sort of the bottom, when you see staggered departure locations, you'll see what I'm talking about here. Here is a mock of basically of what a faith hike or Ten Commandment hike would look like. Let's say what you should do is keep each group together, and the members of each group have 8 or 10, patrol size in each group, and stagger them. Some would start, as you can see down here, just before I have a lunch break, Rochester Catholic Church, Commandment 7. So have someone start there, have another group start at like Christ UMC number 10 commandment, do not covet the neighbor's wife. So have them at different places, and they may pass each other on the road. You don't want to have everybody all at one place at one time. So have them staggering through, and working out the logistics of this is key, is very, very important to do. And something not really mentioned here, but if you're planning to do one, I would sincerely think it's a great idea to have. And if you don't do it, you'll find out you wish you should have. Have an engine and a caboose. Have a leader to obviously lead them to where the next house of faith is going to be, and have a map of know where they're going. Have a connection on the phone to say, hey, we're 5 minutes out, so they can be prepared. But also, particularly with younger scouts, that caboose is necessary, because who knows how far back they're going to stray. Or they see a doggy over here, squirrel, and they head off that direction. So to keep them all together. So the working through a staggering of the starting point for each one, and then making sure you've got someone to lead and to trail on each group, I think is very important. There's some patches. I don't think scouts really live for patches, do we? Can anybody here show a patch? No, I don't have any. A good thing is to have a closing event, as you always would with a camporee or anything. Have a certificate, get a patch. These patches below are ones that I had, and well, I don't have them anymore. But when I first was presented with what a faith hike would be, as you can see, these are both from Sun City, Arizona in 2005 and 2006. What I like about these, not only having the 10 Commandments tablet there, but it shows the different faiths that were involved with those particular hikes. And a really cool thing is the bridge with the fleur-de-lis on it. That shows where we all serve one God and what it can be. I think, and this is from some other things I have done, I have not done this on my hikes, but obviously give a letter and a certificate of appreciation to the house of worship where you have been. But if you take that patch that you may design and turn it into a lapel pin and give that to the clergy in that particular house of faith, they're probably not patch people. Certificates they can hang in their study, their office, but have a lapel pin or a pin of some sorts. It's pretty cool. I've done that with other events, and I see several years later they're still wearing it, or at least when they see me, they're having it on. But they've got it, and it's not a patch. What have you accomplished on that? Is I think you've done a number of things. As you've gone into 10 different houses of faith, and to say again, to different, not only denominations, but different visions of faith and different ways of looking at your faith, you may see something you really didn't know before. So introducing faith communities and faith, other faiths to the Scouts, I think is very, very important. Also something that I've got there at the bottom, because I know you've seen if you've been a part of any of these sessions before. Um, you could develop an interest in the God and country of the pray programs, or not just pray, because that's Protestant, but also the Terry Day and all the other faiths. You could do something for those youth, and something that our friend John presented just yesterday about chaplains and chaplainades. You may have a young man or young woman who has something in them and they're just not really quite sure. And when they go through this type of event, they may come to you as the leader and say, how do I become a chaplainade? How do I get to do this? This can be a starting point. This could be a linchpin to really send them on their way. The last little bullet point, everything we do in scouting should have that. And if we don't have that, well, we've missed the mark somewhere. And as I know that I heard Amanda say earlier, we're going to share this. I certainly have no issue with on this or any other topic that you want to reach me, but there is my information. This is really kind of a quick lead in to what a faith hike or 10 Commandment hike would be. My friend following up with me has much more experience with them and has some really cool ideas. So I hope you hang on and jump into the next.
Exactly. On that, if you want to take over, and if you'll hit end share, it will allow him to share his part.
Yep.
I'll share it in just a second. My name is Jacques Behar. I'm on the National Jewish Committee on Scouting. I live in Ogden, Utah, which seems a little bit incongruent being a Jew, but I ended up here and I very much enjoy it. I have participated and helped in 10 of these 10 Commandment hikes. This year we're doing actually what we're calling a walk of faith. We have done hikes, we've also done walking hikes, and we've done bike hikes. You can do both. One of the things that Bill had talked about was have a leader in a caboose. True, very true. But we also had a car, and that car would take off about 2 or 3 minutes before the end of one section, go to the next section, and let the religious organization know that we're coming. We'll be there in about 5 or 10 minutes. That gave them time to get set up and get ready to go. I did see a comment asking if there was a charge. We would charge $5. That $5 basically covered a patch and a little something that I'll talk about in a minute at the end of the hike. One of the things that I do want to caution people on is that we found, and how do I do this now? I need to share my screen. Which is it here? There it is.
Yeah, it should be towards the bottom.
There it is.
There we go. Cool.
Okay. On the first hike that we had, we ran into a slight snag. And that is something that we learned very quickly, that some religions don't use the same 10 commandments. They use the same 10, but they cut off half of one and add it to the next one. So we had a problem. So what we did is we put this worksheet out, which is in the Dropbox folder or the share folder, so that we can all look at it. Look at that. It has, we would give this to the religious organization so that they had some idea of this is the order that we're going to do. So we didn't end up with a commandment being done twice. We would do 10 of these going around. At the last one, we would end up at the synagogue where we would have somebody, either the student rabbi or one of the congregants, unroll the Torah, the Bible, and actually point to and chant the 10 Commandments. And the kids and the scouts really loved that. The other part, just prior to them going in the sanctuary to see the Torah, we would do our commandment. We would then say the blessing over the fruit of the vine, the bread of the earth, and we would give them a little snack of some bagels and cream cheese. And that was how we made up the $5. The bagel, cream cheese, and the bread, the challah, and the grape juice, and the patch were the $5. The other thing that we started to do about 8 years ago is that we had a sleepover. So we started on Friday night, and we had the Scouts camp. We would have an interfaith service. We would have some music, some patriotic music, and we would have a keynote speaker. The kids would get to bed, get up in the morning. We would serve them breakfast and then put them out onto the street. We had usually 6 different groups going out of about 50 to 70 each. And we ran them in, as Bill talked about, circles. We would start one at the first one and one at 6, and then they would spin in circles and then all end up in 2 waves at the synagogue for the reading of the 10 Commandments out of the Torah. So this document right here is in the share box. Please look at it. You might want to use it so that you don't end up getting duplicates of the 10 Commandments. I also want to put up my information. As Bill said, call us anytime. We'd love to talk scouting. The last item that I want to talk about is this year, our council here in Utah merged. We now have the entire state of Utah, a third of Wyoming, a little sliver of the southeast part of Idaho, and a little sliver of the northern part of Nevada. To do a 10 Commandment hike in that area, a bit of a challenge, a long walk. So, and with the COVID-19 and everything and not knowing what we can and can't do, we're actually going to do a virtual hike for the first time. And we'll see how that all works out.
All right, thank you. If you'll end your screen share, and Lynn, we're working our way towards you. I'm just going to bring up the question, if you want to answer it, of how did you get such a large turnout of that many scouts while you're transitioning?
I can't. Oh, and
Let's
okay.
see how your multitasking goes.
What we did is we started the first year. We had about 75 or 80, which was pretty good for a rainy day. And people heard about it, loved it, kept coming back. And it just grew and grew, and we were concerned this year that we would probably have 500 or 600, and then the council merged, and we lost a lot of scouts, and the rest is history.
This is Bill. I think if you happen to have it, we don't have one in my home council. I wish we did. A religious relationships committee. Those are people you'd really want to sponsor in and work with a great deal. But it's word of mouth as much as anything else. If you've got really active units in a particular church or synagogue or temple, they'll want to be part of this. And it will, as Zach would say, it will certainly very much grow in time.
Okay, so we're going to transition in towards a weekend religious emblems retreat concept. I can see Lynn's getting ready.
I'm ready.
I'll go for it.
So I do a share screen here?
Yes.
Okay. Oh my goodness. There it is. Let's see. I guess we don't need this part over here, but we'll keep it like that anyway. Anyway, what we're going to do in this part of the presentation, we'll talk about having done where we're going from the hike to the camp out. And the purpose of the camp out is to have basically Bible study in the woods. Now, for some of you who think that might be impossible, so did I, and so did a lot of other people. And when we put this first one together back in, well, I can tell you this, in the Houston area, the Sam Houston Area Council, which is most of Southeast Texas, the Catholics have been putting on a retreat for decades, and they're still doing it. And they still draw a crowd. And they draw a crowd of not just Catholic troops, but other troops who are looking for an experience that connects duty to God to the scouting experience. What we did as the Episcopal Committee, we decided to take that one step further. Instead of having a camporee, we did the focus on what was in the God and Country Award. Today, of course, that's duty to God, but it's still very much coordinated with Pray Incorporated there in St. Louis. So we saw this thing grow from just a diocesan function in the Episcopal Church, where we would do it at the local church camp. First one turned out to have over 100 scouts from various troops all over the Houston council area, to actually we were going into other dioceses and other Boy Scout councils, other Girl Scout councils, because as an award, it's an award for the entire church, which includes Boy Scouting, Girl Scouting, Campfire, and even Sunday school classes. So we were reaching literally at any one of these retreats over a 16-year period, reaching close to 100 youth at any one time, and in some cases, all ages. We found ourselves doing even Cub Scouts. So basically, that's me. That's a painting from 55 years ago in August when I was at Philmont. So that's I painted that when I got home. Couldn't get it off my mind. I talked to a good friend of mine who was a chaplain up there, and he told me that a couple of years ago the flag was still there. So how about that? We're going to jump right into. Well, I've got a lot of slides here. For those of you who will be able to get copies of this later on, and Amanda, will we be able to have copies distributed of these presentations?
Yep, we'll make sure they're all in that Google Drive, and I just reshared the link into the chat message.
There you go. So you can, we won't get into a lot of detail here, but we'll try to do as much as we can. You can pick up the detail later, or at least contact me, and I'll be glad to discuss it with you. But again, the purpose of a Duty to God Weekend Retreat is to give us an opportunity to set aside a period of focus on the award program without interruption. If you could do a camporee that's focused on wilderness survival or emergency preparedness or first aid, and you can get all those scouts, whether they're a Boy Scout troop or a Scout BSA group, and you can focus on first aid training for an entire weekend, believe me, I discovered you could do it with the Bible. So it will work. So what you end up doing in the weekend is that you can come close to completing 40 to 50% of the program, depending on which one of the programs you use. And you'll have an opportunity then over the next 2 to 3 months, possibly, to actually complete the program. And you'll be able to have an award ceremony for many of these boys in a fraction of time that you would if you did this one weekend at a time or 1 month at a time over a period of a year. Also, this is an opportunity to do this on any level of scouting. But the first day, there's several things you need to do, just like the hike and what our friends were talking about a few minutes ago, is you need to put together a committee. You need to know who your audience is. You need to have discussions also with parents. And that's one step we didn't talk about in the 10 Commandment hike, in part because there's a lot of parents involved, but we also want parents involved in retreat. But in any troop, in an Episcopal troop, believe it or not, I was the scoutmaster for a Catholic troop. You have not just the Catholic boys, the Episcopal boys, you've got kids from the Methodist Church, you have Lutherans, you have Assembly of God, and we even had a Buddhist. So you can have kids from all different faiths, and if you're going off to a religious retreat, you need to have some discussions with the parents. You need to tell them what they're getting into, and we'll talk about in a few minutes too. From a committee point of view, you need a number of different people to make this successful. I was never so surprised in our first meeting for the first retreat we did that I had 2 priests show up in uniform and a collar. I couldn't believe it. I said, I actually had no idea. But then again, most of you do have a number of pastors who are scouters or who have been in scouts and maybe even have children in scouting who wouldn't mind being your spiritual director and your counselor for the retreat. This is a person that will eventually sign off on all the workbooks, but he's not necessarily, and he might be a teacher, but he's not in charge. He is the spiritual director He's the person you're going to go to if you have any theological questions, for example. You'll need a chair for the retreat. You need someone to head it up. You're going to need an assistant chair who's going to make sure all the training certifications are in, all the permits, because if we're going to do this over a weekend camp out, at a camp, whether it's a Boy Scout camp or the local Lutheran camp, we need to make sure we have all our permission forms, all our permits, all our medical records. So you need someone to follow up on that. You need a treasurer. For some reason, I never worried about this, but somebody did, and the money always came. And we never lacked for having enough food or money to go buy food. You need a supply coordinator to get materials and supplies, workbooks, for example. You need a head cook or a food service manager, or food network. We need a chef and a sous chef. Need someone to help prepare meals. We were so fortunate in the Houston area that we actually had a culinary school at the University of Houston. And I don't know, and there's also one in Austin, Texas. And I don't know how many times we were able to get interns, if you will, come down and prepare meals for us. You're going to need instructors. You're going to need, and you usually recruit these the night before, some of them, but you'll have a few that are going to be coordinating certain parts of the program. And I always call them BTU burners, because you can't keep the kids in the classroom all the time. So it's a good thing to have an activities chair, someone that's going to organize some games just before supper that night. And then there's got to be you need your other committees: first aid, security, transportation. And if you're lucky enough, and I highly recommend this, I know I'm talking about a camp out, but if you can find a church camp or a state park or a facility that has cabins or lodging for troops and different groups of people, take advantage of it. That way, when the kids get there on Friday night, they are not having to worry about pitching tents and taking care of all that, especially if the weather turns bad on you, and the weather will turn bad. Let's don't forget that we do have some rules to follow. Not only do we have our youth protection training in the Boy Scouts, but many of our churches do as well. The Episcopal Church is no exception. In many cases, you need both pieces of training. I would go so far, and we went so far as in the past. I don't know if we can do it today or not, but you might be able to actually have a class on Friday night where you might be able to train to get them up to snuff. But I cannot emphasize enough, we need to follow the rules. Now, knowing the audience, what kids are we going to invite? If most of you are familiar with the PRAY program, and I'll back up over here, and I've got, I have it all laid out as well. I got copies of all the workbooks here. Jason Nolan is very helpful. All you gotta do is send him a check, and he'll send you all kinds of stuff. We started out by focusing on one program. Sorry, I need to put earphones on so I can hear what's going on. And we started out with Boy Scouts, and we started out with the God in Church program, and that worked very well for us. But as we expanded and went and more in other places throughout the diocese, we had parents. I was in that situation. You got a Boy Scout and you got a Cub Scout, so it was very easy then to do a God in Church and a God in Family program at the same time if you had enough leaders to help teach it. God and Family is real easy to complete a lot of this program in one weekend. So there's something to be said about getting the kids excited about actually earning a medal in maybe 3 months' time. There's those that there were a few Tiger Cubs would come in, and you have a little class for God and Me. And believe it or not, you'd have some Explorer or older Scouts who could do God and Life. And these are the ones that actually helped us put on services at night, the older kids. They loved doing that. And of course, all ages like to participate in a service. It's a brand new program. How many of you have seen this? This is the new program that PRAY has for, I call it lions, tigers, and wolves and bears, or something like that. I think it's lions and tigers, called Jesus and Me. But what I'm trying to tell you is that these are all, the PRAY books are all by grade levels, but they come pretty close to matching what we need to do on the Scout level. So if you know what your audience is going to be, you know which one of these programs the program books you're going to need. And in this case, I'm focused more on just the God in Church because of that. Also, these books, this group of books here, has been designed for and has been accepted for use by the list you see on the screen. The AME Church, the Baptist, the Christian Church or Disciples of Christ, of course, the Episcopal Church, the Lutheran churches are doing this. The Pentecostals and the Assembly of God, the Presbyterians, both units, and the United Methodist Church. That is a lot of Christian congregations. And it goes from one end of the spectrum to the other. Having married into several of these, I married into two of these. I married into the Baptists and the Pentecostals. And when you're an Episcopalian, it's a, whoa, is this different? Until you do something like this and you find how much you are alike. So it's very important that you, part of understanding your audience is understanding what churches, what faith, and I'm very careful in telling you that because nothing surprised me more when I had a Buddhist scout. It was wonderful. And he went to all these retreats because he wanted to learn. It didn't change him, but he knew how the rest of us were brought up. So know who your kids are, but also don't forget that some of your scouts either don't have a church or don't have a church affiliation or are totally unchurched. And those are the ones that, believe it or not, they're going to be just as excited about participating on this weekend camp out with the rest of their friends. So, did you have a question there?
We are getting close to time. We will get
Yes.
the rest of this presentation put up, but if you want to kind of wrap up in like 30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds. Well, again, the rest of this presentation is focused on God and church, and it takes you on the journey about how to do it. And one of the only other thing I want to point out is that the one thing we are not doing at this retreat is that we're not there to save souls. That's not our job. We're not there to convert one child or another to another denomination or to another faith. Our intent is to educate these young people in the Bible. We are going to talk about Jesus Christ. We are going to talk about his journey from child to adulthood. And we're going to talk about some of the things he did. And then we're going to have a chance at the very end to go visit those other churches, go visit other faiths if necessary, and learn about how those same groups have adapted to what Christ did in his period. So, and that's the biggest example I can give you is that many churches have a food pantry. And one of the things that the projects that you could do here is get behind the scenes and see what they do, participate in one, and then do it. So much can be learned about how different we are, but how much alike we really are. Ten Commandment Hearts is a good place to start. Then take them out for a weekend and see what you can do, Bible in hand. It's back to you, Amanda.
All right, thank you. If you'll hit the end share button, it's normally up towards the top. Perfect.
How's that? There we go.
And we're going to be transferring the control over to Hassan, and he's going to talk about the Muslim Scout Jamboree that they do. So another type of a version of a weekend duty to God item.
Peace and salam to all of you, all my brothers and sisters on faith. I agree with all of you, all the things you are presenting. Just Lynn said that word. We are so much alike. So we have been participating and having this kind of conversation is wonderful, bringing it to the people. So let's take 2 points, right? It is called weekend camping, right? Weekend retreat. So I could talk about one weekend retreat and the jamboree we do for a week. As a Muslim kids, our duty to God is we pray 5 times a day. So that is no different. Many of your kids also doing the same. So why would we go out? We go out, remember the age method, right? Explain, demonstrate, guide, and enable. So whatever we have been teaching our kids in the masajid or mosque and any other place, we love to see that they're leading that effort on their own when they go out there, right? So For weekend camping, if there is a weekend camping, it goes by a troop. The camping is no different than any other camping in the Boy Scout, but we add, just like many of you, we add, number one, whether food would be halal or kosher. So we make sure, if it's a jamboree, we make sure we have a vendor, but if it's a weekend, we make sure we take meat, especially, it's halal or kosher, right? Second, that we have to establish a masjid, like prayer place. So kids knows that. So kids will, first thing they would go in, they'll make sure, find a place. If there's a church, or open church area or open gathering area, they will make sure, investigate that, whether they would be able to pray. So instead of 5 times, we do 3 times. So we combine that. Number 3, all of this event, as I said, edge method, all the kids is going to lead. They're going to lead the prayer. Usually you see in the masjid, imams are leading. Here, the kids would lead. So they go around just like cooking and cleaning, they will lead. Number 4, that we have a small discussion, right? Every prayer, kids come out and recite some verses from Quran, and we reflect upon it. We reflect that, okay, what do you guys think? So we discuss that. So entire program is like that. So the way we do this, and many of you do this, is to enforce those values and give it to them, whether they're perfect or not, that's not the point. Whether they're leading it, enabling themselves to lead it, that's the point. So we, as a weekend camper, week camper, as Lean was saying and others was saying, we cannot teach them about Islam. You know, we just give them what is Islam is all about. So it doesn't differ. We have a Christian kids, we have Hindu kids, we have other kids. We could be there, you know, they could participate, they could do their prayer, we can do our prayer. It's a interfaith, no issue with that. So with that in mind, I'm gonna show you 2 videos. One video is the call to prayer. It was a small one. So like churches, I think they do bells. You can share your ideas, how you call people to prayer. Of course, we have a clock time, but in Muslim prayer, we do a call to prayer. So I'm gonna show you the call to prayer. Second thing, I'm gonna show a video of the Jamboree, and which we did, second Muslim Jamboree, 2018. I'm gonna show you a little bit video of that. Jamboree is bigger scope of what the weekend camping is. So what we do is we are enabling the troops and boys and girls from all around the country. They come on in, they kind of work their way out. They are able to run around. They have halal food. They have a call for prayer. They're praying together. They're sharing ideas. They, you know, all those things. So I want to show a little bit of the video of the Jamboree. Then I will leave it to question and answer. So I have lots of other video, but for now, I wanted to share that. So if I may share my screen. So screen share.
Perfect.
Okay. So as you can see from this video, this is a slight, you know, 1 or 2 prayer call, but kids knows that prayer call has been done, and they got out from the swimming, because as soon as the first one called, they started coming to prepare themselves. So this is one of the calls. And let me show you the Jamboree video. So just a snapshot. I have a video of Charles, but for the timing aspect, I'm not going to show that. The third thing, what we do also, like Jamboree, we find out, we started on the first one, we started bringing the Cub Scouts. So we said, we are gonna do a family camp. So we're gonna bring Cub Scout, their siblings, and their parents to the camp. And they come in with the minimal charge. They come in, they stay with us, they have a 10 round robin activities. They love water activities. When they do the water, parents has to be trained, and they cannot be water by themselves. They could be in the boat or something. So two parents for each boat has to be trained. So why we do this? We do this for the Cub Scout to understand what Jamboree is all about. Cub Scout give them the hope, what is to expect when they become the Boy Scout. So having a Scout BSA also enabled us having our sisters to Jamboree too. So I think I'm going to end it unless we have some questions. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, if you want to end your screen share, we'll take questions for any of the 3 presentations that people have. Let's start specific. Does anybody have any questions about the Muslim Weekend Camping or the Muslim Jamboree that was just talked about? Feel free to jot them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask. And then if we don't have any of those, we'll expand it out to general weekend duty to God style events.
Can I make a comment?
Go for it.
In 2013 and 2017, I was at the National Jamboree, and the Islamic Committee and the Jewish Committee got together. We had a joint service. And in 2017, I was fortunate enough to bring the Israeli Scout Caravan there as well. And if you remember, we were all in one area, and we had and Elliot Klugman actually led the service for the Muslims and the Jewish Scouts, and then the Israeli Scouts performed for everybody. It was an absolutely fantastic jamboree, both of them.
Yeah, I remember that. Thank you. And Syed Naqvi is there also. He's here, and also Osama, one of the committee members. Thank you we have a long way. I think we worked, even in the National Council, we worked with the Jewish committee, and we have then Pack Derby. We do Interfaith Pack Derby together. So they host it. So it's a wonderful event.
Yeah, and Saeed actually did a presentation for the Northeast Region Jewish Committee 2 years ago.
Okay, good.
Paula?
I still remember. Thank you, Bruce.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody, for all of the different things. I've got pages of notes. In the chat, we were having some conversation about, so the Episcopal weekend, I totally get anybody Protestant that makes sense, any of the denominations. I can totally see how that works. What then got mentioned, well, you could have Jews and Muslims come to that. I'm like, how exactly would that work? Would you be having separate sessions for them to work on their own religious emblems, or would you expecting them to participate in the general religious emblems that you're doing? Because I see problems on some of that. So if somebody could talk about that a little bit, what they've done.
John?
You're absolutely right.
Let me go with just a quick intro. In Atlanta, what happened was about 46 years ago, the Catholics started a weekend retreat. Then they invited the Protestants to join them a few years later, and then the Jewish Scouts. And what we end up with, about the time that I showed up on the scene, was we were dealing with every imaginable faith that we could find. And what we do with that is real simple. We're going to start the Cub Scouts in trying to at least have an awareness of their religious emblems. We're not going to try to teach much of that because it's a big challenge to do. We've tried that. We understand how it works. For our Boy Scouts at the time, and now Scouts BSA, we looked at it a little bit differently, because for many of those religious emblems, regardless of the faith, it takes a very long time for them to gain traction and accomplish a great deal. Most of them have at least 90 days worth of readings of their sacred text. So with that said, what we made sure we had happen for Cub Scouts, for Boy Scouts, now Scouts BSA, and Venturers, is we held short little sessions, age appropriate, to tell them how you could get started. And then we wove into it a variety of things, some of which included a merit badge of American heritage. Another year we did, and this has become a staple, is our faith walk or our faith hike. And we have 8 different stations, and all the different faith groups explain their basic tenets. And they all know that they're talking to youth, so they've got about 7.5 minutes to convey everything that they want to say in that length of time. And then we'll close that out with some other activities. Sometimes for the Cub Scouts, it's a short hike. We've even done score orienteering. If you're not familiar with that, it takes too long to explain here, but just shoot me a note and I can tell you how score orienteering will test the mettle of any scout as to whether or not they can find their way. But that's how we've done it, and we're into our 34th year, I believe, of doing the Duty to God encampments. I won't say we figured it all out, because Osama would be the first to tell you that we have retooled it several times in the last couple of years, and we just keep adapting to what works.
Lynn?
Well, when we did a retreat, it was obviously first of all, a Christian retreat, and it had Episcopal service. When we would always have, let's say, Catholics showing up, and in our council, the Catholic Committee on Scouting is very strong, it's very powerful, and you cannot earn the auditory day, for example, by attending the Episcopal retreat. There's just no way, and I agree with that. That's true. They have their own program. We never had, like I said, we've had Buddhism, we've had Hindu, but they participated in the same classroom activities. Again, when you've got anywhere from 50 to 100 scouts participating, whether they're male and female, and you're having classrooms the size of a patrol, it's very easy. Just like we all agreed, I'm glad that we all three agreed that we're there to teach. We're not there to convert. We're not there to push religion on. We're trying to educate them on what the tenets of our faith are and how we go about doing that. In fact, so you would have these kids of other denominations. You'd have the Catholics, you'd have Methodists, you'd have the kids from the Assembly of God, the Pentecostals. We would all be participating, different Bibles, different versions of it. We would read them and say, yours a little bit different than mine, but they're still saying the same thing. And they would still use that in doing their program and their workbooks. And remember, I think, John, in the New Godden Church is still a 30-day Bible study program. One of the things that's always thrown out at me, go read the book of Matthew. It's 28 chapters and finish it in 28 days. However, you can structure that any way you want to, depending on, again, what your audience is and how you want to reach them. And that is, you throw 30 stories of Christ and others. You can talk about miracles, parables, or you could talk about any kind of historical thing and give them a Bible study program to work with. So no, what we found is we just included everybody in the class, and we used the same workbook. It was Godden Church. We had the Godden Church workbook, and they were given one to fill out. I will tell you what, we had some. I know that there may have been a Catholic boy or two that got signed off along the way, and was awarded an Episcopal medal for having completed the program. So because they were in an Episcopal troop, and they went to the priest, and he had his sort of board of review, and they were able to express what they learned. So I think it's just keeping an open mind. You had to start somewhere, and John, apparently over 30 years you've been able to merge all these things and move forward with it and modify as accordingly. I think the
Now,
work
I should comment, Lynn, that I've only been part of the Religious Relations Committee for 32 years. There were many others who set this in place long before I
Right.
showed up.
One thing we've done here in the Twin Cities is we have advertised a Duty to God Day, and we have put out the call for the Jewish Scouts to come, be prepared to work on a religious emblem of their faith, register in advance, and that way we know we need a rabbi. If we have no Jewish kids signing up, then we know, okay, it's going to be a Christian event. We do the same thing with the Muslim Scouts. If you want to earn your Islamic religious emblem, register in advance. We will arrange to have an imam there to help, or a registered counselor approved by the National Islamic Association on Scouting. And Saeed has been very gracious with his time, letting you know who you might go to for that purpose in your area. So we have tailored it so we might have many religions going at the same time, working on their very specific religious emblem. It's a different approach to what Lynn is talking about.
Yes.
And what you need to do is kind of figure out what works. So to Paula's question, I sense, Paula, that you would like to have the ability to have a Jewish scout earn, say, the Ner Tamid, or do at least the classroom portions of the Ner Tamid, right? And recognizing that you may not be able to finish it all in one day. For the littlest kids, they could probably finish the Aleph in one day. Maybe.
Maybe. There's elements of participation in each of those that some of that will have to get signed off later, but there's definitely, they can make significant headway.
Right. And for the God and Me, they can pretty much knock it out in a day. And the God and Family, they can come pretty dang close to knocking it off in a day. God and Church, God and Life, not possible, right? But you can get through the classroom portion of it in a day's time. And I'm sure you could with some of the other faiths' religious emblems, recognizing there will be follow-up. That's just how we do it.
Yeah, Paula, one of your question is, I think Baltimore Council Jewish Committee hosts every year. I did not get a chance to go there. They also do the patch and something. So somehow they are doing it. I didn't have experience. It was a weekend camping, but I know Jeffrey is here, but we did several married badges together, and also he is one of the guy who leaded the Derby. So yeah, as Bob said, anybody can earn the emblems as long as the requirement is filled.
Amanda, would you allow me to say a few words? Share is yes. Okay. Thank you.
So this is Jeffrey. Austin just mentioned me, and he also mentioned the Baltimore event. The Baltimore Interfaith Campout or Camporee is not a Duty to God camporee, in that they are not working on various religious emblems, but instead are trying to bring everyone together to work on or to do common activities while having the specific needs of each religious group met. So there are Sabbath services for the Jewish participants. I have not been there when there have been Muslim scouts, but I would assume they would have Jummah and the multiple times a day prayer. They do have Sunday morning services, an interfaith or a Scouts own service. But there was a space set aside for the Jewish Scouts and Scouters to have their Sabbath services as well.
And what was that event again?
That was the Baltimore Interfaith Camporee, which is generally the first weekend in May. Obviously canceled this year.
Yeah, yeah. All right, thank
Amanda,
you.
you need to turn your mic back on.
I was going to thank you for the various ideas, because I was trying to get my head around how are you doing this? And so I appreciate the variety of ideas.
Perfect. What I said when I was muted, so thanks, John. I'm going to hand it over to Saeed if Saeed wants to make his comments, and then I'm going to wrap it up because I know some are trying to get to the next session. And we need to get Saeed unmuted also. Attempting.
I'm here to talk to you about.
Saeed, we need to get you unmuted. We can't hear you yet. Nope. There we go.
Okay. Yeah, I cannot wait to say something because I was so sparked all this conversation I heard. Although I was not prepared, but when I see the Bruce mentioning something and Bob mentioning something, I said, let me share it. As you know that you call the Jewish scouting, the Catholic scouting, Islamic scouting, but I had a question from the day one, but I just follow the crowd. And we used to say that Islamic scouting, but as the word is Scout Jamboree, we declare that we are not going to call the Islamic scouting, but scouting in Muslim community. That's the slogan we are taking now, because over the 40 years, we are doing the scouting together, and we learn that scouting has no religion except the fellowship or humanity. The first religious emblem for the adult, if I just want to bring this to your information, the recipient of the first Allahu Akbar award when we started in 1980, so in the Jamboree 84, I think with the Nancy Reagan came, we gave to the chairman of the Religious Relationship Committee, John Marshall, who was the Jewish. But everybody was asking how come he received this one, because on the manifest it is written that those volunteers who is supporting for the scouting in Muslim community, they are entitled to. So there is an opportunity for all of you. You can file if you are supporting the Muslim scouting. Now, 4 years ago, there was a family approached me and they says, my son wants to do the Cub Scout program, Bismillah Award, and he was from the Baltimore, and he is interested to earn the Bismillah Award. And according to the rules, I assume that this matter is going only the faith, but I crossed the boundary line. I called the Chip Turner, and I said, Chip, the boy is from the different faith, and he wanted to do this badge. And Chip was very open, and he says, Syed, this is your ball. If you are allowed any faith, they can take it. So I took the lead. And if any one of you remember at the National Council meeting, at the Duty to Guard breakfast, that boy, Cub Scout, received the Bismillah Award, and he was from the Hindu faith. And my God, the Hindu who's not, who's believing the different way, but this boy and the grandfather, grandmother, everybody was on the table. And they came, and when they explained, they came to my home also to meet and discuss these the things. I inquired everything, and I found that this child is going every Sunday to the Baltimore Islamic Center and try to learn the things and complete his badge. So here you go. We have open book, the Islamic Scouting in Muslim community, and the Islamic Council is open for any boy who's any faith, even for the atheists, if they wanted to come and learn something. And while we are learning, we are getting better human being. That's the purpose. So here you go. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming and learning more about some different weekend ideas and other ideas. We are starting the next session in the other room on the Peace Light of Bethlehem, if anybody's wanting to join into that. Otherwise, we'll see you later this week or check out more sessions on social media. Thanks, everyone.